Hello, Steve. And today I'm joined by Stephen Jensen of Fightful.com. How are you doing today, Stephen?
I'm doing fantastic today, Anthony. Are you doing good as well?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you, mate. So as I said, you are working with Fightful. How did you get started working with them?
So with Fightful, it's interesting. So I'm trying to remember exactly the timeline, but I got kind of my first I first started in kind of like the pro wrestling space with Fansided and Daily DDT. I used to do some writing for them
Yeah,
just as a contributor. And I think a lot of people start that way, just going on, giving kind of my opinions on wrestling, just kind of hoping anyone cared about the stuff I had to write about, just trying to get something out there. And between that and I started my own podcast called Fight Talk. And that show, I was mainly interviewing independent professional wrestlers, some mixed martial artists as well, and basically just trying to get my name out there at all. Just like, does anyone care about anything I'm doing? Like, just anyone interested in having me help anywhere, basically, was what I was, whether it was MMA or pro wrestling, didn't matter to me. Just wanted to find some sort of work in these worlds. And my big break was with MMA on Point, the YouTube channel. I went on with them as a video editor and the manager of their social media for around 3 years. And during that time, things started overlapping with Fightful, and I started becoming closer with Sean Ross Sapp and really like working with him and the team there. And that's kind of how it all got started. So now I'm pretty much mainly with Fightful, and then I do some independent stuff as well. I left MMA on Point a year ago.
yeah.
They focus on Fightful.
So, so as you just said, you work with MMA on Point as a video editor. So what made you like get into video editing?
Oh, so that's a great question. I wasn't a video editor, and I had no interest in being a video editor when I started with them. When I started with MMA on Point, it was strictly at first. It's a wild story. So Jason Hartley is the guy who runs MMA on Point, and he just happened to live like 45 minutes away from me. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee at the time, and he lived in Clarksville, Tennessee. And it was just a really small world thing where like we wound up kind of meeting through Twitter. I think I was posting some links about just the videos. As a fan, I was like, if you like MMA, like these videos are great. And he saw the tweet. He just happened to live close enough. And I started as just their social media manager. I started their Twitter and their Instagram, and there was no followers across any of the social media. They maybe had maybe 10,000 subscribers at the time. They probably have probably almost 900,000 now. So it's grown a lot. But that I started as strictly just to Jason's credit, like, I've had my issues with MMA on Point and when I left and stuff, like to be fully transparent. I have friends there still, and there's some people I don't really get along with anymore. It just is what it is. But one thing I'll always say positively, Jason Hartley, he taught me how to video edit. He taught me how to how to use Photoshop. He taught me a lot of skills that I currently use, at my current other jobs. So basically what Jason did was like, I was cheap work, because it was like they were a small company and I didn't ask for a lot of money. And Jason taught me how to do this stuff, and they just needed another editor at the time. So he taught me how to video edit on Adobe Premiere. So to answer your question, Anthony, I had no intentions of being a video editor, but because of a job I just wound up kind of getting, they taught me how to do it. And now I do it kind of all over the place. So it's kind of wild how it turned out.
I forgot to say, that from the video that I saw that you personally edited or put together, it looked really good. So I would definitely say you got some talent for video editing.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate that, man. It's something that I like. It's funny how things work out, because initially when I was doing writing, and I still do some writing, I'm currently with a YouTube channel called All Things MMA, which is very similar to MMA on Point.
Yeah,
Is And I write videos for them and edit videos for them. It's just way more sparingly than it was for MMA On Point. It was a full-time thing. All Things MMA is more part-time. Fightful is more part-time. I kind of do a bunch of little part-time things to make it a full-time thing across multiple platforms.
Yeah.
But thank you for the compliment, because my favorite thing actually is video editing now. Like, I really, really enjoy the process. I love that people can watch the video and like enjoy what I've put on the screen. So I appreciate that, man. Thank you I'm glad you liked it.
No worry. So as you just said, you do a lot of part-time things that makes it a full-time living, basically. So did you do that on purpose so you could work with whoever you wanted, basically, and so you wasn't tied down to one particular person or one particular organization?
Yeah, that plays a role in it. Like, there were multiple factors for me leaving MMA On Point that I don't really want to talk about, but I will but I will say this, like, I think that MMA On Point, I think that they are the best YouTube channel for mixed martial arts. I will not say one bad thing about their content. I think that their content is great. And most of the people that are there, I still am friends with and I still really like. But things happen, as I'm sure you know, Anthony. Sometimes things happen that just no matter what job it is, sometimes you don't get along with everybody all the time. And it's just, but the timing just worked out perfect, because I was already doing more outside of MMA On Point at the time. And I wanted to kind of control my own destiny a bit more. I saw the writing on the wall in a lot of ways too. I don't know if you followed the company of MMA On Point recently, but now they're pretty much completely based out of London, England. They have a completely different team now. It looks very, very different than it did when I was there.
Yeah.
Now, there were a lot of changes happening, and I kind of saw the changes coming. So I tried to stay ahead of it to the best of my abilities. I knew that there was other opportunities out there, but to also answer your question, so the goal, yes, is to do this stuff full time. I do currently have a part-time job that I just started to just help supplement, but it's something I only do on the weekend. So it works out really, really well for me. But it's one of these things where, like, yes, there's pros and cons, right? Like, if you stay with one company and they give you a lot of work and you make good money and you're happy, that's a really good situation. But I also like the situation that I'm currently in, where it's like I get to do all this different stuff, and it's stuff that I really, really enjoy doing. And it's like, it's less money, but it's like, kind of a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. When you put it all together, it isn't that much different than what it looked like before, but I get to have a lot more fun doing what I'm doing now. So that's kind of, if that all makes sense.
Yeah, I would imagine it gives you the opportunity to do a bit more variety. So you're just not the MMA guy or the pro wrestling guy. You're Steven Jensen, if you know what I mean. Because some people, they get labelled as a wrestling guy or the MMA guy.
Yeah, that's very true. Not necessarily that's necessarily always a bad thing. I think that a great example is Sean Ross Sapp, who, and big shout out to Sean. He's now already owner with Fightful. I mean, just doing great things. Because what people need to understand, when people like Sean get these kind of deals, that helps everybody out. Because it increases, whether people realize it or not, it increases the value even to like my level of like what people do. Because it makes it look like this is he's getting real. He got like an 8-year contract, and he's like a minority owner in this big platform now, which is awesome. And the reason I bring all that up is because Sean told me really early on in me knowing him, he said the reason that he likes working with me, but one of the reasons is that I'm diverse to the point where I can do either. If he needs somebody to jump in on something that has to do with MMA, I know what to do. If you need somebody to jump in on pro wrestling, I know what to do. So it's like I'm not pigeonholed like you were just saying, Anthony. It isn't one of those things where he might be sitting back one night and be like, "Oh, we really got to do this MMA video," but like all my guys are pro wrestling. I don't know if Steven does MMA. He does MMA and wrestling. I can tell Steven. So it's like it gives me a lot more opportunity that I'm in both worlds for sure.
Yeah, That's what I try. That's what I try and do with my podcast and my personal channel. I want it to be buffet, like a buffet. Excuse me. I want it a bit of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Because even so, I do a show on Tuesday nights with my friend Doug called Live
Yeah,
Rounds, and that's something that we really try to do, and that's kind of what the name is about with Live Rounds. Is like it's kind of unpredictable because with Doug we do MMA, we do pro wrestling, but we also talk boxing, especially with all the crazy
yeah.
celebrity boxing and all that.
Mm.
We professional football, you know what I mean? So it's like it's a lot of fun to be able to just kind of go all over the place and talk about all this stuff.
Uh, and even somebody like me that might not like American football, I can listen to it and I can still find enjoyment out of it.
Well, I appreciate that because that'd be like me talking about football because I don't know much about soccer. So, but if somebody is into soccer, see that's the thing. If someone's passionate about something and it can really show through, like someone could be talking about cricket. I know nothing about cricket other than it looks kind of like baseball, right? But my stepbrother has recently gotten into cricket, like he's been watching it and he's been talking about it so much that I'm like, you know what? Like if he's around and it's on, like I'll check it out. Like he's sold me on it with how excited he gets about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I just mentioned you do a show with Doug called Live Round. Yeah, why do you think you and Doug connect so well as a pairing?
Sorry, what was that? Live rounds with Doug.
I said, why do you think you and Doug connect so well as a pairing?
Oh, yeah. So, so that's a whole other thing. Dude, these are great questions, by the way. Like these are really, really, really good questions. So with Doug was actually one of the first people I ever watched on YouTube ever. And this was back in like 2006 or 2007.
I remember it was 2007. Because remember we used to do the TNA Addicts show, whatever it's called.
Yes, no, you nailed it. TNA Addicts. That was exactly it. And that's so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I was a fan of RVD Tito for life. Like I was just a fan. I was watching. So I'm a little younger than Doug. I was in college in 2007. So I used to like sneak away from my friends like in our dorm and stuff so I could like watch when I found out like a new RVD Tito for life video was coming out, like I would sneak off to watch it because like I was still kind of embarrassed to be a wrestling fan because like it wasn't a cool thing, you know, then and stuff. But I was always so into it. So I used to watch their videos and anytime I used to, because that was before notifications and stuff too. Like I'd have to go on and like refresh the page and hope there was going to be a new Bill and Doug video. And if there wasn't, I was hoping there was going to be a new True Slayer video or a new Jeff Meacham video or Best Power, all those guys, right? So I was a fan of Doug's. And then we wound up just through our mutual love of like football and wrestling and MMA. That was another one where just through Twitter, similar to me and you, Anthony, just kind of meeting through Twitter through similar interests, me and Doug just started kind of talking more and more, and just kind of caught myself just talking to him more often about random stuff. And then I asked him to come on the Fight Talk podcast when I was doing currently Fight Talks more so me uploading stuff I've done on YouTube, but then it was me really doing a lot of audio interviews. And so I started having Doug come on my show on there just to talk about wrestling. And it was around the time that AEW was starting up, and him being the big TNA guy, I saw this as like, oh, wow, this is kind of like his big second chance because AEW could wind up being everything they wanted TNA to be. So fast forward a little while, me and him just started talking, and like we've been doing some podcasts together on my thing. And he already had his YouTube channel and it was already, you know, monetized and everything. So it was like, dude, why don't we just start doing my show video version on your channel? And it's already set up. We'll just split the money or whatever. And like, we'll just see how this goes. And that's how I was a fan. And now, in all honesty, and it sounds kind of weird saying this, because I've never met him in person before. Doug, if I had to rank like my top like 5 best friends right now, like in my life, Doug's probably in that top 5. And it's a guy that I was just a fan of in college. You know what I mean? It's just weird. It's wild how this stuff happens.
I completely know what you mean. I completely know what you mean. I remember watching Doug and Bill when I was in the 7th grade. As you guys say.
Yes, yeah, grade 7 for you. Is that what you guys call it?
Yes, 7. I'm 25 now, so it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's awesome that you like, because it's so different for people like me and you, right? We're like, we lived through that. Like, we're not going back and watching it now in hindsight. Like, we lived through those days of like the early YouTubers, and because people don't realize Bill and Doug, they were racking up hundreds of thousands of views back when like no one was doing that. Not even in like, they were on the front page of YouTube often back when that was like a really big deal, and like they actually pushed like independent creators. Now it's so much more.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it's all, dude. That's so cool that you were watching that stuff also, man. I love that.
Yeah. So you're obviously doing another show with Jesse. So I did like working with Jesse in comparison to working with Bill.
Oh, compared to working with Doug. Yeah. So
sorry.
No, that happens all the time. People say Bill all the time. Like, it's funny. They will always be linked together. I don't know if you caught it, Anthony, but him and Bill did an episode together a few months ago. It was like a reunion episode of Bill and Doug.
Yeah, of course.
Good. I'm glad you were able to see. So as far as Jessie goes, she's become a good friend of mine, very similar to Bill, or sorry, now I call him Bill, to Doug. See, there you go. Jessie, I met very, very similar. We met through Twitter. Me and her have quite a few mutual friends in the wrestling world, including Sean and others that are kind of linked with Fightful. She's kind of loosely affiliated with Fightful. If there was like a Fightful like hemisphere of some kind, and Sean was like this, like the center of it, I'd kind of be right around here. Like, me and Denise and us are kind of right around here, and Jessie's like just right off of it. Like, she doesn't work for Fightful, but she's like pretty much with us, right? So similar to like Hannah Moore, like really similar. So me and Jessie got to know each other just kind of through wrestling Twitter, and the same thing. I started having her on the Fight Talk podcast. Before I knew it, I realized I had her on like multiple times, and we feel really comfortable with each other on air. Like, she can say a lot of stuff, I think, with me that she's comfortable saying. Like, there's some topics that, especially during like the speaking out movement and all the Me Too stuff, when we were doing a podcast for that, like, it means a lot to me for her to be comfortable talking about that kind of stuff. So it's having the female perspective, because there's a lot of things that I don't really think about as a guy that girls are going through their heads. And like, it's good to have that mixture and that balance and kind of understanding both sides in a lot of senses. So as far as Jessie, I'd say that me and Doug's show is a bit more, we deep dive a bit more. We're both kind of like ultra fans of a lot of this stuff. Jessie's a really, really big pro wrestling fan. But she wants to stay positive as possible on that show. Yeah. Which is great. It's a great balance though. Like, I have like my happy show with Jessie, and then my like, let's keep it real show with Doug. You know what I mean? So I love both of them. Like, Jessie is such a good friend. I mean, she mailed me a box of cookies from Sarasota, from Eric Stevens Cookies and Cream the other day. I mean, like, that's just the kind of person Jessie is. Like, she'll mail me gifts and stuff. Like, she's the best. Yeah, well, I would compare you with Doug to more like Marky's show, and I would compare you with Jensen to more like an analytical show. What I mean by that is, like, with Doug, you will literally sit there and understand 2 hours marking out. Yes. AEW,
And it seems like a more relaxed, relaxed conversation.
Yeah, very accurate. Very. I mean, you're right on the money. Like, so, like I said, with me and Jesse, it's more of kind of a feel good thing, right? With me and Doug, it is too, just in a totally different way. With Doug, like you said, we mark out a lot about AEW, and so does Jesse, because Jesse's a big AEW fan too. But she's able to see. I'll tell you what a big part of the difference is, Anthony. And once again, I can't stress it enough. I love both of them. Like, they're like two of my best friends in the world. Just two kind of different types of shows. So the perspective that I'm going to have on Jesse's show in comparison to like the perspective Jesse may have, a lot of that I think stems from the majority of what she watches is going to be AEW, WWE. She's dipped her toes a bit into the indies.
Yeah.
Like, I am like both feet in on the indies. Like, that's my favorite stuff. Like, outside of AEW, my favorite stuff is like GCW, this kind of stuff you'll find on independentwrestling.tv. So me and Doug's perspective is so much like, hey, there's so much talent out here. I can't wait to see how AEW uses them. And like, we're really familiar with all these guys from like a really kind of low level perspective. Jesse, I think it's easier to get excited about like the stuff WWE is doing if you're not as in touch with what's going on outside, because I'm not saying one's better or worse, but like, if you mainly watch WWE or mainly watch mainstream pro wrestling, I think it's easy to look at certain stuff that WWE does and be like, oh, this is pretty good, or like, this isn't that bad. But if you're like watching all this other stuff and you're comparing it to the WWE, you're like, oh, WWE sucks compared to like this other stuff I'm watching. You know what I mean? So it's just different perspectives.
There's something that you always say. There's something that you always say, and I always agree with you. WWE for children, and there's something wrong with that.
Exactly. So, and that's something that I wish more kind of adult or like teenage to adult aged fans would really understand, and really also get that, like, it's not like I just said the WWE sucked just then. That's not fully true, right? I don't like what they've done with Raw in the last year or handful of years. I haven't been watching SmackDown, but I see that SmackDown's been a good show. So it's like, I know there's parts about WWE. I watch 205 Live and NXT UK every week for Fightful, and like, those are good wrestling shows. So I know it isn't fully like, this isn't so simple like WWE sucks. Like, that's a bit of an exaggeration on my end. But the real point, like to what you were saying, Anthony, is like, the issues I have with the WWE from my perspective as a fan, that's only for me, right? It's like, but I always say it, like, if I was a kid, and this is the exact example I use all the time. If Sting, I was a huge WCW fan. If Sting would have showed up on the Power Rangers and I was 8 years old, that would have been incredible. Like, I would have wanted something like that as a kid. And I think that's where the WWE is heading. Like, I think they're going to sell to Disney. I think it's going to happen within the next couple of years. So it's like, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I just wish more fans would just see, like if you have issues, if you're an adult and you have issues with the WWE's programming, it comes off to me like an adult having problems with like Dora the Explorer or something. Like it isn't for you. Like, it's like you're an adult complaining about a kid's show. Like, just accept it for what it is. Like, if you want, my favorite show of the past year, Anthony, was the Mighty Ducks Game Changers on Disney Plus. It is a kid's show, and I loved it because I thought it was a good show. I just don't think Raw's a good show anymore. That's simple.
Well, it's for you and Duck, speaking of the Mighty Ducks show, made me want to go and watch it.
Did you wind up watching it?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I don't think it was amazing, but it was very good.
Okay, hey, that's fair enough. See, my thing is, like, I'm just a huge mark for those movies. Like, I have, as you remember, because you're 25, so you're not too much younger than me. I'm 33, pretty similar generation.
Yeah.
I grew up, as you may have as well, where like we had VHS tapes. So like if you didn't have the internet and you only had what was on television and your collection of VHS tapes, you wound up watching those VHS tapes a lot. And the Mighty Ducks I had on VHS tapes. So that was something where I just watched it a lot as a kid, and I just loved the movies. So I thought the show did a good job creating a platform for the new generation, because they can have a second season and more movies and stuff. But it also had enough in there for me as a fan. And this is my point with Raw. Coming full circle on this, the whole point is Raw can be a kid's show, but they have completely alienated my fan base. They don't give me anything as a fan anymore, and that's the problem. If they were doing what the Mighty Ducks Game Changers did, it's for kids, but the story made sense. There was payoffs to the stories. Everything made sense, but there was also things in there like the Gordon Bombay storyline, the old Ducks coming back, like the references about, there was all these movie references throughout the series. So me as a fan, like they're still catering to me. It's a kid's show, but they're not insulting my intelligence, and they're still giving me a little bit of what I want. WWE has just kind of been like, hey, we know you used to be a fan. We don't care anymore. We're just going to keep getting more 6-year-olds. We don't care about you anymore.
This is the way I look at it. Yeah. The Mighty Ducks series was a series you could sit down with your children or your younger relatives, and you could all enjoy it. WWE, it's not really like that.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money. You know, there was another comparison I was going to make that I just slipped my mind, but that really is. Oh, here's a good example. Space Jam 2 that came out recently. I love Space Jam. I've got like the original Michael Jordan Space Jam figures in the box still in my office up here. Like I've got a Space Jam banner. Like I loved that movie as a kid. Loved it. I did not like Space Jam 2. I thought it was terrible. But I'm not on the internet complaining about it because it's made for kids. Like it's like if I'm going to complain about that as a 30-year-old, it's like, what are we doing here? This is clearly a kid's show, and they're just trying to get a new generation of kids to watch it. You know, just is what it is.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's okay not to enjoy everything that you used to. As you get older, your perspective on life changes and your taste changes. Obviously.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing. It's like it's accepting the change. And here's the great thing, Anthony. And this is the thing that I think gets kind of overlooked when people like fight over what wrestling company to be a fan of and all that stuff. The great thing about this is we're in this space with wrestling where if you don't like what you're watching, there are so many other options that like you don't have to stop being a fan of wrestling at all. Like if you, and this is go for just WWE, like if you've been watching Impact Wrestling since 2002 and you're like, you know what, I've just kind of had enough of it, like, but I'm going to keep watching the show and breathe really heavy into my keyboard and get really angry and type about it it's like, no, just go watch AEW, watch GCW, watch independentwrestling.tv, watch New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's all available right now. You click one button on a computer and like any company you've ever wanted is like right there in front of you. Like it's the most accessible time to ever be a wrestling fan. So I understand it if your job is to review professional wrestling.
Yeah.
That's one thing. That's one thing. If you're Sean Ross Sapp and you got to watch Raw every Monday because that's how you make your living, that's a completely different scenario. If you're Joe Schmo who's been watching Raw for 25 years of his life, but is not getting paid in any way, shape, or form to watch the show, and you're just complaining about it on Twitter for 3 hours every Monday, like find something else to watch. Like focus your energy somewhere else, or start a podcast and complain about it there. But like it's you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Exact wavelength I am with this. So yeah.
Like the way to look at it, it's like if you don't like beef, you're not gonna go to McDonald's, are you? Complain about the food if you don't like beef, are you?
Exactly, right? Like, I mean, that's and it's like, I get it with the WWE to a degree, right? I mean, I'm part of it. Like, if you could see this side of my room, Anthony, it is nothing but WWE memorabilia. I mean, I still collect WWE Elite figures and Ultimates. Like, I will always, to some degree, be a fan of World Wrestling Federation or World Wrestling Entertainment, whatever, right? But like, so there's a part of me that I started watching wrestling in 1994. That's at least where I can remember. And so we're talking over 25 years, close to 30 years now of my life. And a big part of that time was spent with me being like, just so loyal to it. Like, it's going to get better. And even if it doesn't, like, at least like I can watch it every Monday. And it meant so much to me. WCW, WWF, and ECW back in the 90s, man, like, my family went through a lot of rough stuff. And it was just one of those things where, like, that was my escape, as I'm sure it is for so many people, right? Yeah. Like, things might not be going your way, but you had that like few hours every Monday to just like escape and enjoy some wrestling. And people hold on to that feeling with the WWE. Like, they want it to get better. They want it to be something that they can always be a fan of. But it's like, when it's just the writing's on the wall, like, they're going to sell to a kids company. It's going to be about, the wrestling is going to become secondary. Now, if you can accept that and you're okay with that and you don't want to complain about that, that's fine. As I'm sure you know from watching my shows, Anthony, I've never once told anybody not to watch Raw. Like, I think if you like the show, you should watch it. But if you don't, find something else to do with your time.
And if you do like it, you can't get mad at other people not for liking it. At the end of the day, there's a billion people in this world, and not everybody can like everything that everybody else likes.
Yes, exactly. Like, if you were seeing, that's another thing about wrestling, and it is strange because wrestling is kind of one of the only things that I feel like is like this. But wrestling they've put out such a large net. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but they've put out such a large net of like wanting to attract every type of fan. And in a lot of senses, that's great. Like, the more inclusion, the better, right? Like, that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But you also have to keep in mind that, like, there are most shows you watch, not that I watch or that you necessarily watch, but most shows on television that do really well in ratings, like a show like The Real Housewives, for instance, that's specifically for a certain viewer. Like, that like, I'm not, as a 33-year-old white straight male, I highly doubt that they're like, that's the guy that we're expecting to watch our show every week. Like I watch it, but like, it isn't for me. But like, if they just started trying to cater for me, the next thing you know, like, Real Housewives, all the people who watch that show and enjoy it right now, if I start getting involved and start going like, well, I watch this show now, and, you know, I don't like what I'm seeing on the screen. Like, you need to include more. I need to see a football player every episode catching touchdown passes at least once. But so like, they might start catering to me, but then they're going to start losing their core audience because all these other people that have been watching the show are going to go, hey, this was a show about like women fighting each other, like with relationships. Now I'm having to watch football clips. Like, this isn't what I'm a fan of. And that's what kind of happens with wrestling to a degree.
Now, moving on to AEW, I think AEW are the best American product out there right now. Like, I don't like it. I don't like everything that they do, but I like about 70%. And you know what? That's what I want. I just want certain things that I can enjoy, and certain things I can take my mind off of stuff for like 2 hours or however long it is.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so that's the thing, right? You just said you like about 70% of the show. That's a pretty big win still, right? Like, that's like, if you're getting a pro wrestling show in 2020 on television and you're liking 70% of it, That's pretty good. See, I'm more in the camp of liking more like 90 to 95% of it. But the point is, when I watched Raw, I liked like 5% of it. You know, so there's a very big difference there. So the fact that you like the show enough that you can kind of use it as your escape, enjoy and like really enjoy the show. And here's the thing, it's going to be super rare that we ever get a show right that's like 100%. Like there's going to be some misses here and there. So 70%, I think that's pretty good. And it sounds like you're enjoying the show for the most part, right?
Yeah. There's a couple of things that I do not agree with. There's certain things that we can't really speak about because it's all like it's a bit awkward. But as I said, I enjoyed some of it, and I don't enjoy other bits.
What's an example of something that you like or don't like about the show? Just to give me an example.
Like for example, I obviously when AEW started, they preached about diversity, but I don't think there's enough diversity on the show sometimes. Just my opinion, of course.
Did you say there wasn't enough diversity in the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a fairly common complaint about AEW. You're not alone on that one. I think that'll continue to get better though. Do you mean more from like a race standpoint or more of like a female standpoint?
A bit of both to be honest.
Okay, and both are complaints about AEW from a portion of the fan base. I understand those. I think when it comes to race, I think AEW, could they do better? I think they could, and I think that they will. Because I think they listen. I think they've done a really good job of like really listening to the fan base and being like, hey, there's enough noise being made about this or that. I think we should really try this or that. When it comes to the women, that's definitely getting there, right? Because I think that now they've set it up, especially with Britt Baker being their champion.
Yeah.
Now they're going to get a lot of attention on that. I think Ruby Soho is going to bring a lot of attention as well. And they've quietly kind of assembled a really solid base. And what I think people need to really understand is like, and I've talked about it on my other show, so you may have heard me say this, but like AEW didn't have the luxury right off the start of having a roster like Charlotte and Sasha and Becky and Bianca and Shayna and Asuka and Io Shirai and just yada, you can go on and on and on and on. But what AEW had to do was they pretty much had to find the best independent female talent they could, which was pretty slim pickings at the time. I'm not saying like these wrestlers are bad. They just don't have the same kind of star power of the people I just mentioned. So they had to really slow build it. But now they're at a point where they've got a pretty good foundation on the division. And more of these women are going to get peppered into the show. Like Ruby Soho is not the last one. I really think Charlotte's going to come over whenever her contract's up. And like that would be massive. And when you get that kind of stuff going on, that gives the more screen time to the women in general. And it's all a trickle-down effect. So I think with the race thing, I think that will get better. It's just the AEW just got to listen more to the fans. But with the women, that's definitely getting there. I think that they're going to definitely have more focus going forward.
Like for example, do you know last week Diamante and Big Swole had a big blow match to their rivalry, and it's been on Dark all the time. Why is that on Dynamite? I understand you want to get people watching Dark, but should a big match like that should be on Dynamite?
Yeah, so I agree with all of that. And I know a lot of the AEW fan base said what you just said, Anthony. Like a lot of them, that's a very fair point to be made. That's a feud that's been ongoing. They even continued it on with the Casino Battle Royal, like with the two of them getting eliminated and like fighting each other to the back. So for them to do the blow-off match on Dynamite, I do think that definitely should have, on Dark, I think that definitely should have been done on Dynamite as well. I think you're right about that.
And you know when I speak to my friends that are different ethnicities, yeah, and they watch AEW, yet they say to me they don't feel like they're represented enough with certain things.
And see, that's fair. And the other thing that I need to make really clear, I mean, especially if people are hearing like an audio form of this, like I'm a white male. So it's like, my perspective, like I'm not going to have the same perspective. So it's one of those things where like, if there are people out there that feel underrepresented, then like they have every right in the world to feel that way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying they're wrong at all for feeling that way. I think that, but here's the thing. I think that AEW, I think that they're listening. Like, I'm not saying it's perfect, and I'm not saying that they're there yet with that stuff, but I would encourage your friends who have those issues. All I could really say to it, I would say, enjoy the show for what it is at the moment, but hold out hope, because like, I really feel like, because I'm also a big believer in the best people getting the spots as well.
Yeah.
You know? So, but that's a balance as well, right? Like, you want representation, but you also want the best. So like but there are plenty of people that are quote unquote like minorities that are the best, but they just have to get the spotlight to prove it. So I'm just glad I'm not in charge of making those kind of decisions, because that's a tough spot to be in if you're any company, because you want the representation, but you also want the best show, and you got to mix both. So
I've been told by other people.
That's exactly true. And that's another reason why I think it's so important. Like I was talking about my show with Jesse, like having a female perspective, because as a guy, like there's just certain things there's no way for me to relate to it, because I'm not in those shoes. So like and here's another thing. When I see shows like For the Culture, for instance, that's, primarily African-American shows, those shows wind up being incredible. So it's one of those things where like the representation, like, it's a hard conversation to have, because it's one of those things where it's like there are a lot of people that are still, when you see a show like For the Culture, that's just such a good example, because every wrestler on that show is good enough to be on any company. Like, they're all good enough to where like they could be anywhere. So you want them represented. So it's like, but then whose spot do they take, or is there room for everybody? And that's where I think AEW does well, is I think there is room for everybody, because they have a very large roster. So it's like, I think that AEW is going to be able to find a balance of both. But it's a process. We also got to keep in mind, they've been around for like 2.5 years. Like, they're still figuring this thing out.
It's still early in their career, if you want to say that. It's still early in their development as a company, so I'll give them a bit more time to like get things properly set up. But I would like to see eventually, I would like to see major changes to what we've spoken about already.
Yeah. So, and that's another really good point there, Anthony, with them being a new company, is because I think for AEW, this is just my own perspective, and this is like regardless of gender, race, whatever. Like, I think their kind of big play at first is like the people with the biggest names. You got to get out there. Like, it doesn't matter what color they are, what race they're, like who has the biggest names, because we got to just make people aware that this show exists.
Yeah.
But now they're getting to a point where it's like, because they're so tapped in on the indies too. It's great. So now we got dudes like Lee Moriarty and Wheeler Yuta and stuff that are kind of coming out of nowhere, that are going to be able to represent for those that may feel underrepresented, but are also on this level where like they're going to grow with the company, and they're going to be two of the biggest stars at some point in the next couple of years. Lee Moriarty and Wheeler Yuta are going to be main event guys.
Yeah.
It's just like you said, we just got to let the process play out a little bit, I think. But like AEW, I think they got the finger on the pulse of what to do here. So
yes, they are two of my main concerns with AEW. But as we've said, I'm sure they will correct them. I mean, I hope they will.
Yeah, that's all we can hope. Like, if we have this conversation again in a year, Anthony, we're still saying the same stuff, then I'll be a little concerned. But by the way, like, I spoke to Lee Moriarty the other day through DMs a little bit, and like, I cannot wait to see more of him on AEW. I'm a big fan of his indie work. So like I think AEW is doing a great job with like signing new talent too. The way that they're setting up their future. Like they have their big stars, but they're doing a good job building up for when those stars aren't around anymore.
Do you think the roster? Do you think the roster is a bit heavy? Do you think there's a couple too many people on the roster? Or are you one of them people that think that you can never have too many people?
So I don't know if I could ever say that there's no way of having too many people, but I think what AEW is doing right now, I do like. I do like that they're putting together a really big roster because the way that they book stuff, they're like someone like Eddie Kingston, for instance, he might only wrestle like once a month, or he might only be on the show every couple weeks, or like Sting or Darby and these guys. They don't get featured every single week, which not only keeps them from becoming overexposed, which was a thing in the 90s that I think helped wrestling so much, was that we didn't see these wrestlers all day, every day through social media, or even on TV all the time. Like there was kind of a mystique to them still. With AEW, it's like they're in a position currently where they have the right amount of talent, I think, to fill out the shows that they already have and to feature and to not have to feature the same people on Dynamite every single week. Like it might be Miro one week and then Miro's not there for a couple weeks, but then he's there the next week. But they don't ever lose their star power in the process. It just gets more people onto the shows. So,
and in the 90s, yeah, when they used to have enhancement talent that used to be credible, if you know what I mean. I think AEW can get back to that. I'd like enhancement talent that actually credible. Can injured, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're talking kind of like versus how like you could have like jobber squash matches, or you could have like an enhancement talent come in that's like kind of how like Bryan Danielson was enhancement talent for the WWF at one point. Like he was credible, but like but I think that's what AEW's done really well with AEW Dark. Like guys like I've just mentioned, like Wheeler Yuta and Lee Moriarty, and there's going to be a lot more that have kind of got their feet wet on Dark as enhancement talent. I think RSP is one of them as well. He's been losing a lot of matches on Dark, but I think that there will be plans for him as like an actual like legit dude on AEW at some point. But to your point, yes, I think there's room for both though. I think there's room for the squash matches, because every now and then I think it's cool to have like Brian Cage go out there and just like hit like 5 really cool just leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But to your point though, I think that there's that as well. Like you also want to have a guy like a Lee Moriarty come in and have like a solid match with somebody and like almost win a few times, but still lose. But you're like, all right, he's the enhancement guy, but like he's gonna be something though. So yeah.
So a couple more questions, I'll let you go. So obviously CM Punk is recently debuted along with other people. With CM Punk, it feels like it's Phil Brooks playing CM Punk rather than CM Punk, if you know what I mean.
So it's kind of like CM Punk playing CM Punk versus him being CM Punk?
It's like Phil Brooks playing CM Punk rather than CM Punk, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah. I see exactly what you're saying. The CM Punk thing is kind of strange, right? Like, now I was saying this prior to his debut, that I knew that the shine for him isn't going to last very long. Like, he's going to stay popular, don't get me wrong, but like those type of Chicago pops that he's been getting, like that's going to die down. And I think a big reason for that is because CM Punk, kind of to your point just now, like it is kind of weird because he is kind of playing, it's like Phil playing CM Punk. Like I haven't heard anybody say that yet, but I think that's like a really, really good point. Because I see that as well. But what I think is going to be the big turning point for him is whenever he turns heel. Because I think it has to happen sooner than later. And then maybe he can really dig into being the old CM Punk again. But right now, he just kind of feels like the guy who's like, yeah, like I'm back, y'all. And then like he comes out again. He's like, I'm back, y'all. And it's like another week. Yeah, guys, I'm back. And it's like, okay, we know you're back now, but like the issue is going to become you're back and you used to be awesome and you're still pretty good. But now your competition is like Jungle Boy, Darby Allin, Moxley, Cody. I mean, like there's a lot of guys that are like Aleister Black and Andrade and Pac. And I mean, there's just so many guys you can mention. Lucha Brothers, Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, of course. So it's like now you're like in the mix with these guys who are like world-class talents, and you're kind of probably past your prime when you really look at it. So you've got to do something to stand out again and to give people a reason to really get reinvested in you again beyond the fact that you're just, you're CM Punk. So dude, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to steal that, Anthony, if you don't mind. I'm going to probably say that on some of my shows about Phil Brooks playing CM Punk out there.
Yeah, as long as you give me some sort of really, I don't care.
Oh no.
So anyway, so you've said that you're a big fan of Cody Rhodes, and I believe he went to your high school, didn't he? Or you somehow knew Cody when he was younger.
Yeah. It's just such a small world thing, man. Like I'm 2 years younger than him. So he was here in America. I don't know if it's the same over there for y'all, but he was a senior in high school when I was a sophomore. So we were 2 years apart. So when I was a freshman, he was a junior. So my first year of high school, I joined the wrestling team, and Cody was on the team already. And I didn't know him or who his dad was or anything at first. But his last name was Runnels, Cody Runnels.
Yeah.
So I like started kind of putting that together, and I'm like, this guy kind of looks a little like Gold Dust, and like his last name's Runnels, and like he was a really good wrestler, like amateur wrestler. And then I realized like, oh shit, this is Dusty Rhodes' son. Like, oh my God, I'd wrestle like I know Dusty Rhodes' son. This is unreal. So yeah, it's wild how that all happened. And one thing I've said this on shows before, but I wanted to throw it out there for anyone listening here. One thing that I think people need to know about Dusty Rhodes is, so he used to come to all of our matches. Like he didn't miss any of Cody's stuff. And I know that there's a lot of stories out there about like Dustin getting he had a very different upbringing. Dusty wasn't around for Dustin back then, but he was definitely around for Cody. And I used to watch Dusty Rhodes, and this is in Atlanta, Georgia, where like Dusty Rhodes is a god here in Atlanta, Georgia. Everybody knows who Dusty Rhodes is. And he used to be there at our matches, pulling ticket stubs with other parents, grilling hot dogs with other parents, working at the concession stands. He was like every other parent. Like he had no ego. He was like, everyone knew him. It's Dusty Rhodes, but he was still just such a normal guy. Like he just wanted to be like everyone else's parents. He just wanted to be there to support his son. Like and kids would always come up to him in matches, excuse me, asking for his autograph. Sorry, got something caught in my throat. But people would always come up to him, and he'd always sign autographs, and he was always so nice to anybody who asked. And funny story that you may have heard on, I believe they talked about on Talk is Jericho, but I got to witness Xavier Woods versus Cody Rhodes in high school wrestling back when Xavier Rhodes was known as Austin.
Yeah, Austin Creed.
Yes, Austin Creed. And he went to a school called Sprayberry. That was like 10 minutes from my school, Lassiter. So we used to wrestle each other, and Cody beat Xavier Woods before either of them. Xavier would go on to wrestle in TNA as Consequences Creed, and then Cody went off to OVW. But Xavier said in interviews since that he really wanted to beat Cody because he knew Dusty was there, and he figured if he could beat Dusty's son, He'd get into the WWE.
It's funny how people's minds work in it.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's such a small world.
So do you enjoy the Cody verse? Because you have
yeah, so I'm incredibly biased, and admittedly so. I shows that I do, because I'll do some shows sometimes with people who hate Cody, right, or like whatever. But
just let you know, I'm a part of that club. I really can't stand Cody, to be honest.
Okay, see, and that's fair. My thing is this, like, I'll always be a fan of his, unless he did something like, I'm not going to even throw anything out there into the world, but like he'd have to do something despicable for me for me to not like him anymore. But I have just such a different perspective on him, because I watched this guy in high school. I have never seen somebody work this hard in my life in high school at something. Like, this guy, to get good at amateur wrestling, because his sophomore year, he like barely did anything like the state tournament. So he dedicated his junior and senior year to trying to win state. And he wound up accomplishing it. He did it back-to-back years at 189 pounds. I'll never forget it. But what he would do in one day, this is in high school, he would wake up, run miles before school started, come into school, do weightlifting for first period. We had a wrestling class in the afternoon that like our teacher put us all in this one class so we could practice. He would have the actual wrestling practice in the afternoon. He'd go back into weightlifting, and then he'd run again. And this was all every day. And he would only eat like chicken breasts throughout the whole season and stuff. So it's like, I have never seen somebody that dedicated to something. And this was in high school. And to see the way that he treated people back then, he was a superstar in our own high school, but he was such a nice, normal, he was a thespian. He used to be on the drama club and stuff. Like, he was just this like totally normal dude. And to watch his career in the so I followed it from high school through his OVW run, and then to see him in the WWE was just mind-blowing to me. But then like when he quit the company, which actually happened on my birthday, whenever that year was, I remember it was May 22nd. And when he left the company, I remember being like, damn, like, I don't know if I'll ever get to really see Cody again. Like, this was like one of the main reasons I was still watching the WWE, was like to support Cody. And then to see what he's done since then, that's why I get so excited when I get to talk about the guy. Because like now he's the EVP of the second, in my opinion, the best professional wrestling company in the world. Got this great wife, got a great little family they've started up. And I just have a totally different perspective. The same as anybody would, like if you went to school with somebody and like you saw them make it big, you know what I mean? I just have that kind of attachment to them.
I understand your perspective, but as a fan, it's like, when Cena used to win all the time in the mid 2000s, it feels a bit like that with Cody in AEW. When he loses the first match in the feud, I already know he's gonna come back and he's gonna win the feud as a whole.
So and I think a lot of people feel that way. I see that on Twitter often. I think now I will say this. I think there's a chance that Malachi Black beats him again, though. I really do.
I hope so, but I doubt it.
You hope so. I know. I hope Cody gets the win back. But as an AEW fan, and what I think the company is best off doing, even though I'm the biggest Cody fan in the world, I think it would be a better move right now to have Malachi win again. So I can keep it real too, though, when I think it's like best for business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I really want Malachi to beat Kenny Omega, get at the story that they've told for the last 3 years, and I think it would be like TNA 2011, just to get the belt to Brian or somebody new that coming in.
So the question, like, should Hangman win, or do I think that somebody else might win instead of Hangman now?
Basically what I'm saying is, do you agree with the theory that Hangman should win the belt from Kenny?
Yes, so I do. I think that the right I think the right story and the right move is Hangman should still be the one to beat Kenny Omega. Now I believe the other reference you made was like 2011 TNA, and I think what you mean by that is like if like a Jeff Hardy debuted and just like just won the title and like threw all the plans out the window just because Jeff Hardy's here now.
Yeah.
I could see them potentially doing that with Bryan Danielson, potentially. In my perfect world of AEW right now, you got to do Kenny Omega versus Bryan Danielson as soon as possible. Next big show or the Arthur Ashe show, you just have to have Danielson get into the rankings. That's kind of the thing. It's like he just got to get into the top 5. And to do that, he's only going to have to win like one of the matches. He just has to beat the right people. So I think you do Omega and Danielson. I think Omega should win. Like he should win the match and he should do it clean. I really think they should make Omega look as good as possible. And that also can be a story arc for Bryan Danielson. He could go back and like shave his head and his beard and like come back as like the real American Dragon or something after. I don't know. But I think as long as, because if Omega beats Danielson, it makes Hangman Page look even better when Hangman beats Omega because Danielson couldn't even get the job done, but Hangman could. That makes Hangman a real star. So I'm with you. I think that Hangman should be the one to do it. It's the long-term story they've been building up. I say it all the time on my shows, Anthony. All I want is stories that make sense and good match. And this story between Hangman and Kenny has made sense, and you know they're going to have a great match. So.
And for me, I'm probably invested in the story. So if they don't do that, I'm going to be really disappointed to the point where I might stop watching because I'm so invested in the story that if they don't do that ending, I'm going to be really annoyed because I've invested so much time into it.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans feel that way. Now, like I said, I think Bryan Danielson, there's a chance there only because it is him. There are guys that are certain levels that like it's understandable, but I would not do it personally. I would not have anyone but Omega win that title because I feel like you got to stick true to that story with Omega.
So 2 more questions. I'll let you go, mate.
Sure.
So my penultimate one is Bray Wyatt or Kevin Steen. Which one would you prefer? Because I would prefer Kevin Steen.
Would I prefer Kevin Steen to come to AEW or Kevin Owens? Is that what you asked?
No, out of the 2 of them between Bray Wyatt and Kevin Steen.
Oh, I missed the Bray Wyatt. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So if it's me, yeah, I'm going Kevin Steen 10 out of 10 times. Like that's, yeah. Now Bray Wyatt can offer a lot of interesting storylines, but Kevin Steen offers a lot more better matches, in my opinion.
But you say that, but Kevin Steen could also offer some great stories. Don't forget Mount Rushmore with the young bucks and Adam Cole.
Yeah, Mount Rushmore, yes sir. And that's another. I mean, and that's the thing I talk about so much with Doug, right, and with Jesse. But like, Tony Khan is one of us, Anthony. He's somebody who's within. I mean, to you, almost a 10-year difference. To me, more like a 5-year difference. Like, he knows what. I mean, like if you're thinking about it, right? If you're thinking, man, they can get Kevin Steen, they can do Mount Rushmore, like all the pieces are in place. Tony Khan's thinking that also. You know what I mean? Like, so I think the possibilities are endless. And then especially if they wind up getting El Generico at some point, you can have that just a way better version of what they were doing in WWE, but in AEW. And of course, what they were doing in Ring of Honor and AEW. Like, the possibilities are endless. I do like Bray Wyatt, though. I like him for a lot of reasons. But Kevin Steen is one of my favorite independent wrestlers of all time. Like, I think that he's the kind of guy where me and Doug talked about in our last show. AEW, when you see a guy like Adam Cole or a guy like Bryan Danielson pop up in AEW, it's like they're coming home, right? Like you get that feeling of like, y'all are coming home. And Kevin Steen, like, this is Kevin Steen's home. He needs to come home.
Yeah. And just very quickly, my personal opinion, I wouldn't like to. I would like to see Bray Wyatt, yeah, but only Bray Wyatt fits better off. And in fact, we can do the spooky stuff. If you try to do the spooky stuff in AEW, I'm not saying it wouldn't work, but you'd be like, okay, it might not be fully accepted by the crowd.
Yeah, and that's a good point because like Impact Wrestling, they definitely do more of that kind of stuff. The kind of the bizarre camera trick video type stuff. The issue, I just didn't even call it an issue. I could see Bray Wyatt going to Impact. I think he would be a good fit in Impact for a lot of reasons. I feel like he's just too big of a star to go to Impact. And I hate to say that because I like Impact, but I think Bray is like I don't know if he would want to go to Impact. I think he might hold out to go to AEW if he had the opportunity. That's just my own opinion.
And another thing, I'm very good with that about Tony Khan and the Booker. If you remember, Paul Heyman got burnt out toward the end of ECW. So I'm a big concerned about Tony Khan. And do they have a contingency plan? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, I have no idea. See, but the thing with like big difference between Tony Khan and Paul Heyman is like Tony Khan has the money, you know, like a lot of the issue with ECW and Paul Heyman at the end was like he couldn't pay the talent and stuff. But then like there's also the booking and stuff, like you're saying, like the booking end. But I think AEW, the thing with Tony Khan is I think he's pretty much just doing like whether he was getting 1,000 fans or 1,000,000 fans, I think he'd put on the same show. I think he's just really putting on whatever show he thinks he would like as a wrestling fan. And that's what I like so much about it.
It's not what all bookers do. They like the show that they like, and then the crowd likes it great. Like, do you know what I mean? 'Cause a lot of these bookers or writers, they create the show that they want to see a lot of the times, and then they just try and work it in the way that the audience will like it.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, that's very true. The issues lie though, of course, when like you're doing that, but then you're so stubborn that like everybody hates the show. Like that's the thing. AEW is so far from that though, right? Like if they were putting on a show like that, and I know I just said like whether 100 people or 1,000,000 people were watching, like Tony Khan would probably do the same show. I don't think he would do a show that was attracting 3,000,000 people and then like be okay if it dropped down to 1,000. I think kind of when AEW started, it's like, well, I'm just going to put whatever I want out there. And to a degree, he's still doing that. But there's definitely an audience for it. When you look at like the WWE, that's people booking a show that they want to see, that they think they would like. But the audience is like, I mean, the kids are like, this is great. But then like a lot of the audience like us is like, yo, boo, boo, like listen to us, boo, do something different. So, yeah.
And my last question, do you know if you unfortunately passed away tomorrow, how would you like to be remembered in the podcasting space?
Oh, wow. You said if I were to pass away, how would I want to be remembered?
In the podcasting space or even in life?
Yeah. That's an interesting question, man. To some degree, that's why I do this stuff. To some degree, a small part of it. I like having something out there for the world. Like, even if it's just a few people watching, like if I have kids one day or, you know, my brother does or anybody who like the next generation of people that would care about me or want to know about me. Cause like, here's like, I'll like to get kind of deep on the way out of here. Like my mom passed away when I was 14 from breast cancer. And that was in,
Sorry to hear that.
It's okay. I appreciate that though. It's a 20-year anniversary in May. And the reason I say that is because that was in 2002. So this was pre-Facebook, pre-social media, pre-everything. So there's just like very little about my mom out there. you know, just like, it's almost like she didn't exist pre-social media. Like when you like really think about it, other than the things that I'll post or whatever. So when I think about it like that, I'm kind of like, I'm glad that there's like this audio of me and like these videos and like this stuff we're doing today, Anthony, like this will go up on YouTube and like people can see this and kind of know who I am, what I sounded like, what I was all about, my perspective on stuff. And it just kind of puts something out there. Like maybe one day someone will watch this right now as I'm explaining it, you know, which is really surreal to think about. But that's the way I want to be remembered is as, I haven't really thought about this too much, but the way I'd want to be remembered is as a fan who's a fan just like everyone else who listens. Anything that I do, I'm the same. We're all fan. I'm a fan. I use pro wrestling as a crutch in a lot of ways, as a coping mechanism in a lot of ways. And it's something that's very important to me. And I just really appreciate anybody who enjoys the stuff that I do. I can't thank them enough for just listening, even if it's just one person who listens to a podcast or whatever. Like I want to be remembered as a guy who is nothing more than a fan that was lucky enough and that worked hard enough to get my voice out there. But I just hope that people enjoy the stuff that I do at the end of the day.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, with me, it's a bit different. I just want to inspire people with disabilities, also people that don't have disabilities, that you can do whatever you want in life, as long as it's physically, as long as it's practical, if you know what I mean. Like, I'm never going to be a pro soccer player or football player or NBA player, for example, but I can do this.
Yeah, and I think that's incredible, dude. Like it is inspiring. And just so you know, I so my brother, I don't know if you're familiar with dystonia, what dystonia is.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too familiar with it.
It's very similar to Parkinson's disease. And my brother struggled with that very, very, very much so. He's had 2 brain surgeries. He has the pacemakers going up to his brain, and the whole deal. So when I see that, and I see guys like you out there doing inspiring stuff, guys like Gregory Iron out there wrestling, you know what I mean? Like I think it's incredibly, incredibly important. And I deal with some neurological stuff myself, like, you know what I mean? Like it's something where like I've got some damage in my right arm that you know prevents me from being as good at certain things as I wish I was and stuff. And it's one of those things where like when you hit me up and you asked me to do this show and I looked up your channel, I immediately said yes, because I was like, dude, this is awesome. I'm really happy you're doing this show, Anthony. I really am. I'm really happy you had me on, and I'd be happy to do this again with you. I think this is inspiring, and I think there's people that are going to see this and they're going to be like, yo, if there's anything out there that I feel like I can't do, like, screw that. Like, I'm just going to go out there and do it. So I appreciate you, man.
I'm planning to do episodes around AEW and all the pay-per-views and all the special events. So maybe I would send you one sometime, and then you can tell me what you think, or you can come and join me sometime.
Yes, just let me know. Absolutely, man.
So thank you for coming on, mate. I know you said you only had an hour, but thank you for coming a bit longer. I really appreciate it.
No, this was great, man. This was perfect. And like I said, dude, like it's cool as hell that you're doing this show. Keep doing this, keep doing your thing. It's cool as hell that you're an OG fan, that you were watching Doug's videos back in the day like I was. Like, what? I did not expect to hear that. So, dude, this was honestly one of my favorite interviews I've done, like, ever. Like, the questions were awesome. Like, you got me really thinking about stuff too. Like, so this was great. And like I said, just let me know when you want me to come back, and we'll make something happen, man. I really, really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, definitely, man. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, share and subscribe, and have a good day.